Do not mistake the quiet for peace. Beneath it lies terror, clawing to be heard. These stories are drawn from the graves themselves. Enter if you dare, and remember to like, comment, and subscribe. The summer heat clung to the streets of Morgantown, West Virginia, like a heavy blanket, the air thick with the scent of blooming jasmine and distant rain. It was July 18th, 2013, and Matthew Pike, a 24-year-old with an easy laugh and a future bright as the university town around him, walked hand in hand with his girlfriend, Kayla, through the quiet neighborhood near the Monongahela River. Matthew, a recent West Virginia University graduate working as a sales rep, had that boyish charm. Dark hair tousled from a day at the office, his athletic build from high school football still evident under his casual polo shirt. Kayla, 22, a nursing student with long brown hair and a warm smile, leaned into him as they strolled back from a late dinner at a local diner, their conversation light, filled with plans for a weekend getaway. They had been together for 2 years, their bond strong, despite the stresses of young adult life, unaware that eyes watched from the shadow. Carl Edward Brooks, a 34-year-old man with a troubled past and an unyielding obsession, had been following Kayla for months, his fixation starting innocently enough at a campus event where he spotted her laughing among friends. What began as distant admiration twisted into something dark, Brooks convincing himself she was meant for him, and Matthew an obstacle to be removed. Brooks's obsession had roots in isolation, his days spent in a rundown apartment on the edge of town, surrounded by walls plastered with photos of Kayla clipped from social media and newspapers. He had no connection to her beyond glimpses, a barista at a coffee shop she frequented, a face in the crowd at university games, but in his mind they were soulmates, Matthew a rival stealing his destiny. Brooks, a former factory worker laid off years earlier, filled his time with surveillance, noting Kayla's routines. Matthew's car parked outside their shared apartment. He bought a knife online, its blade sharp and cold, practicing in the dim light of his living room, whispering plans to himself. That evening, as Matthew and Kayla turned onto their street, lined with modest homes and flickering streetlights, Brooks waited in the bushes, his heart pounding with a mix of fear and resolve. Kayla kissed Matthew goodnight at the door, heading inside to their cozy 2-bedroom, while he lingered to lock his truck, the night air cooling slightly as stars emerged overhead. Brooks emerged from the darkness, his footsteps silent on the pavement, the knife gripped tightly in his gloved hand. The attack came without warning, Brooks lunging from the shadows as Matthew fumbled with his keys, the blade sinking into his side with a sickening thud. Matthew gasped, pain exploding through his body, his hands instinctively grabbing at the wound as he stumbled back against the truck. Kayla, hearing the scuffle from inside, froze for a moment before rushing to the door, her scream piercing the night when she saw the stranger upon her boyfriend. Brooks turned, his eyes wild, but Matthew fought back, his football home strength surging as he tackled the attacker to the ground. The two men rolling in the grass, knife flashing in the moonlight. Blood poured from Matthew's side, staining his shirt dark, but he landed a punch, buying seconds. Brooks slashed again, the blade catching Matthew's arm, then his chest, the wounds deep and deliberate. Kayla dialed 911, her voice breaking as she shouted for help, neighbors' lights flicking on like fireflies in the chaos. Matthew, weakening, crawled toward the door, his vision blurring, but his mind fixed on one thing, leaving a mark. With trembling fingers, He dipped into the blood pooling on the driveway, scrawling letters on the truck's door. C-A-R-L, the name Kayla had mentioned in passing during stories of the creepy guy from the coffee shop. From the coffee shop. A stalker she'd brushed off, but now realized was real. Sirens wailed in the distance as Brooks fled into the night, vanishing down an alley, his knife discarded in a dumpster blocks away. Matthew collapsed, his breath shallow, Kayla cradling his head, tears streaming as she whispered promises of forever. Paramedics arrived within minutes, their lights flashing red and blue against the houses, working frantically to stabilize him. But the blood loss was too great, the stabs too precise to vital organs. Matthew was pronounced dead at the hospital at 11:47 p.m., his hand still clutching Kayla's as the monitors flatlined. The scene at the apartment became a hive of activity. Detectives from the Morgantown Police Department taping off the driveway, their flashlights illuminating the bloody scrawl on the truck. CRL, smudged but legible. A dying message that pointed straight to his killer. Kayla, in shock, told officers about Brooks, the barista who'd lingered too long, sent unwanted messages, followed her home once. The community reeled, Matthew's friends gathering at the station, their faces pale with grief, whispers of the stalker's menace spreading like wildfire. The investigation moved swiftly, fueled by Matthew's final act. Detectives canvassed the neighborhood, pulling security footage from a nearby convenience store that caught Brooks fleeing, his hoodie up but his gait unmistakable. His apartment, raided the next day, yielded a shrine, photos of Kayla, maps of her roots, a journal detailing fantasies of their life together. Matthew's name crossed out in red ink. One dead. The knife, recovered from the dumpster, bore Matthew's blood and Brooks's fingerprints, the blade matching the wound. Brooks was arrested at a bus station, attempting to flee to Pittsburgh, his eyes hollow as officers cuffed him, the weight of his obsession crashing down. In interrogation, he rambled about love, claiming Matthew had stolen Kayla, but the evidence was damning. The bloody letters, the shrine, witness statements from Kayla's friends who had seen Brooks lurking. Prosecutors in Monongalia County built a case of first-degree murder with stalking enhancements. Matthew's dying message, the emotional core, displayed in court as a testament to his courage. The trial began in October 2014. The courtroom in Morgantown, packed with locals, Kayla in the front row, her eyes never leaving Brooks. Prosecutor John. Ours presented the scrawl first, enlarged photos showing Matthew's bloodied fingers forming the name. Experts confirming the letters matched Kayla's description of her stalker. Witnesses testified to Brooks's fixation, the coffee shop manager firing him for harassment, a classmate recalling his creepy stares at Kayla during lectures. Kayla took the stand, her voice steady through tears, describing the attack. Matthew's final words, "Run, baby. Get help." Brooks's defense argued insanity, his obsession a mental break, but psychiatrists deemed him competent. His actions calculated. Sir. The jury, after 2 days, saw the truth in the blood. Guilty on all counts. Sentenced to life without parole on November 5, 2014. Brooks showed no remorse, his gaze fixed on Kayla as he was led away, the courtroom erupting in quiet sob. Morgantown mourned Matthew, his funeral drawing hundreds, his football jersey draped over the casket, Kayla placing a rose from their planned getaway. The truck door, preserved in evidence, became a symbol of his fight. later donated to a victims advocacy group. Kayla finished nursing school, channeling grief into helping others, her story warning of stalking's dangers. Brooks faded in prison, his obsession a footnote, while Matthew's name lived on in scholarships for young athletes. The street where he fell stayed quiet, the jasmine blooming each summer, a reminder of a life cut short, but a message that echoed forever. As this story fades, another tale awaits in the shadow. The evening shadows stretched long across the quiet streets of Chicago's Edgewater neighborhood, where the hum of traffic from Lakeshore Drive mingled with the distant call of gulls. It was February 21st, 1977, and Teresita Bassa, a 47-year-old respiratory therapist at Edgewater Hospital, finished her shift with the familiar routine of charting patient notes under the fluorescent lights of the ward. "My guy, you shady patient." Her dark hair framed a face marked by kindness and quiet determination, her white uniform crisp despite the long day. Teresita, an immigrant from the Philippines who had built a life in America through hard work and unyielding optimism, lived alone in a small apartment on Sheridan Road, a sanctuary filled with books, plants, and mementos from her homeland. She was known among colleagues for her gentle touch with patients, her laughter lightening the heavy air of the ICU, and her plans for a trip back to Manila to visit family. That night, after clocking out around 9 p.m., she drove home in her modest sedan, the city lights reflecting off the windshield as she tuned the radio to a soft jazz station, her mind drifting to the weekend ahead. Ahead, Teresita's apartment building stood unassuming, its brick facade blending into the row of similar structures along the street, the lobby empty as she climbed the stairs to her second-floor unit. She unlocked the door, stepping into the warmth of her living room, where a potted fern sat on the windowsill, and a framed photo of her parents smiled from the mantel. The evening unfolded peacefully at first. She changed into comfortable clothes, heated a simple meal of rice and vegetables, and settled on the couch with a book of poetry. But around 10:30 p.m., a knock echoed through the hall, sharp and insistent. Teresita rose, peering through the peephole to see a young man she vaguely recognized from the building, perhaps a neighbor's visitor. She opened the door a crack, her voice polite as she asked his purpose, but the chain held firm. The man, driven by desperation and a thief's boldness, forced his way in, his eyes wild with the thrill of intrusion. What followed was a nightmare of violence. Teresita fought back fiercely, her nails scratching at his arms, her screams muffled as he overpowered her, stabbing her repeatedly with a kitchen knife he grabbed from the counter. Blood stained the carpet and walls, her body collapsing near the bedroom door, the life draining from her as the attacker rifled through drawers for cash and jewelry, fleeing into the night with her stereo and a handful of bills. The next morning dawned, cold and gray, the building stirring with the sounds of neighbors heading to work. A co-worker, concerned when Teresita missed her shift without calling, phoned the apartment around noon, the line ringing unanswered. By evening, hospital staff alerted the Chicago Police Department, officers arriving at the building where the super let them in with a spare key. The door creaked open to a scene of horror. Teresita's body lay sprawled in the bedroom doorway, her nightgown torn, multiple stab wounds to her chest and neck, her eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. Blood pooled beneath her, the knife still embedded in her back. The room ransacked, but nothing of great value taken. Detectives from the Rogers Park Station swarmed the scene, their flashlights sweeping for clues, photographing the disarray and collecting fingerprints smudged on the doorframe. The super identified the building's residents, but no one had seen or heard anything unusual. The thick walls muffling the struggle. Teresita's family, notified in the Philippines, and her siblings in Chicago, arrived in shock, her sister, Remy, sobbing as she identified the body, her voice breaking over the injustice of a life cut short. The medical examiner ruled it homicide, the cause sharp force trauma, but leads were scarce. The burglar theory held, but no suspects emerged, the case slipping into the stack of unsolved files on a detective's desk. Months passed, the spring blooms giving way to summer heat, and Teresita's murder faded from headlines. Her name, a quiet ache for those who knew her. At Edgewater Hospital, the respiratory therapy department felt her absence keenly, colleagues whispering about the senseless loss during coffee breaks. Dr. Jose Chua and his wife, Remy, close friends of Teresita, grieved deeply. Remy's pregnancy a bittersweet reminder of life's fragility. In the fall of 1977, as Remy's due date approached, strange events began to unfold in their home, a modest apartment in the suburbs where the air grew heavy with unexplained occurrences. One night in November, Remy awoke to the sound of her name whispered in the dark, the voice eerily familiar, like Teresita's soft accent. Lights flickered without cause, doors creaked open on their own, and objects moved inexplicably. A photo of Teresita sliding across the table, a book falling open to a page about justice. Remy, rational by nature, dismissed it at first as stress from pregnancy, but the visitations intensified, the voice growing clearer, urging her to listen. On a crisp December evening, as snow dusted the windows, Remy sat in the living room, her hand on her swollen belly, when the presence returned with force. The voice, unmistakable now, filled the room. Remy, it's me, Teresita. Over the next nights, the spirit revealed the truth in fragmented whispers. The attacker wasn't a stranger, but Alan Showery, a hospital orderly who had visited Teresita's apartment under the pretense of borrowing a TV, his grudge over a minor slight turning to murder when she resisted his theft. Teresita described the stabbing, the pain, her plea for justice from beyond. Remy, terrified yet compelled, confided in Jose, who at first doubted but felt the chill himself one night, the air turning cold as the voice named Showery cleared. Convinced, Remy went to the police on January 28, 1978. Her story met with skepticism by detectives accustomed to hard evidence. But Jose, leveraging his medical connections, pushed for investigation, providing Showery's name and details, a 30-year-old black man who worked nights at the hospital, known for petty thefts among staff. Detectives revisited the scene, re-examining fingerprints lifted from a metal TV tray near Teresita's body, matches emerging to Showery's prints on file from a prior arrest. His alibi crumbled. He claimed he was at work during the murder, but time cards showed gaps, witnesses placing him near her building. Showery was arrested on February 2, 1978, his face paling as officers read the charges, denying knowledge but breaking under interrogation, admitting the burglary but claiming it went wrong in panic. The trial in Cook County Circuit Court began in June 1978, the courtroom packed with hospital staff and Teresita's family flown in from the Philippines. Prosecutors presented the forensics, the prints, the missing TV recovered from a pawn shop linked to showery fibers from his uniform at the scene. Remy took the stand, her voice steady despite the stares, recounting the possessions, Teresita's spirit naming her killer, describing the attack in details only the victim could know, the order of stabs, the struggle near the door. Skeptics in the gallery shifted uncomfortably, but the evidence backed her words. The ghost testimony admissible as Remy's first-hand account. Showery's defense argued coincidence, the prints from an innocent visit, but the jury saw the pattern, his resentment toward Teresita for reporting his tardiness, the theft motive clear. On July 12, 1978, guilty of first-degree murder, sentenced to 14 years in Stateville Correctional Center. He served until 1983, paroled early for good behavior, but the conviction stood, Teresita's voice from beyond sealing his fate. Remy gave birth to a healthy son soon after, naming him after Teresita in quiet tribute, the visitations ceasing as justice dawned. Chicago's true crime circles buzzed. The case, dubbed America's Ghost Murder Trial, featured in books and documentaries, Remy's courage a beacon. Teresita's apartment stood empty for months, then rented to a new tenant who felt no unrest, the building's halls echoing with her unresolved spirit, no more. Her family returned to the Philippines with closure, her photo on the mantel, a reminder of a woman whose plea transcended death, her story a whisper in the wind of Edgewater streets. As this story fades, another tale awakes in the shadow. The winter chill seeped through the windows of the small apartment in Vienna, Austria, where the glow of streetlights filtered into the living room like a soft veil. It was January 13, 1995, and Nadine Hogg, a 20-year-old student with bright eyes and a laugh that could light up the room, sat cross-legged on the floor, sorting through her books for the new semester. Her dark hair fell loosely over her shoulders, and she hummed a tune from the radio as she packed her bag for the university the next day. Nadine lived with her boyfriend, Christian Gerald, a 22-year-old engineering student, in a cozy flat they shared with dreams of travel and a future together. The relationship had its ups and downs, like any young couples, but lately tensions had simmered, arguments over money, his jealousy flaring when she spent time with friends. That evening, after a quiet dinner of pasta and wine, Nadine excused herself to the bedroom to call her mother, her voice warm as she chatted about classes and weekend plans. Christian lingered in the kitchen, his mind elsewhere, the weight of unspoken frustrations building like a storm cloud. As Nadine hung up the phone laughing at a family joke, the night felt ordinary. The city outside humming with distant traffic, unaware that it would soon claim a vibrant life too soon. Nadine's world had always been one of promise, a young woman from a supportive family in the countryside who moved to Vienna chasing her passion for literature and art. She balanced studies at the university with a part-time job at a bookstore, her days filled with the scent of old pages and the chatter of customers. Christian, charming when he wanted to be, had swept her off her feet at a campus party a year earlier, his confidence drawing her in despite the red flags, his quick temper during disagreements, the way his eyes darkened when she mentioned other guy. Friends noticed the shifts, Nadine confiding over coffee about feeling trapped, his possessiveness growing as he questioned her schedule and scrolled through her phone. But love blinded her to the danger, her optimism painting a picture of working through it. That night, as snow began to fall softly outside, Christian joined her in the bedroom. the conversation turning tense over a forgotten errand. Uh, Words escalated, his voice rising as he accused her of not caring. Nadine's pleas for calm falling on deaf ears. In a flash of rage, he grabbed a kitchen knife from the nightstand, the blade glinting under the lamp, and struck, the attack sudden and brutal. Nadine fought back, her hands pushing against him, but the wounds came fast, stabs to her chest and neck, blood staining the sheets as she gasped for breath. Christian froze, horror, dawning too late, before fleeing into the night, leaving her body crumpled on the floor. The next morning brought horror to the apartment building. A neighbor noticing Nadine's door ajar and milk left on the step, untouched since delivery. Police from the Vienna State Police Directorate arrived around 10 a.m., their boots echoing in the hallway as they entered the flat. The scene was grim. Nadine's body lay in the bedroom, her eyes open in a final stare, the knife beside her with Christian's fingerprints clear. Blood trailed from the bed to the door, signs of a struggle evident in overturned lamps and scattered books. Detectives noted the divorce papers half hidden under a pillow, unsigned but recent, hinting at the motive. Nadine's mother, alerted by the university when she missed class, arrived in tears, clutching a photo of her daughter at graduation, her sobs filling the room as she identified the body. The medical examiner confirmed death by multiple stab wounds, the time around midnight. Defensive cuts on her hands showing she fought hard. Christian's absence raised alarms, his phone silent, his classes skipped, and police issued an alert describing him as a person of interest in the homicide of his girlfriend. The community reeled, friends gathering at the bookstore, their faces pale with shock, whispers of the couple's arguments surfacing like ghosts. The investigation unfolded with urgency, detectives canvassing the neighborhood for witnesses, one elderly resident recalling raised voices late that night, muffled but heated. Christian's car was found abandoned at a train station in Salzburg, 200 miles away, his wallet and phone inside, suggesting a panicked flight. Border alerts went out, but he had slipped into Germany, holding up in a cheap motel near Munich, his mind racing with regret and fear. Back in Vienna, forensics tied him to the scene. Blood on his jacket found in a dumpster near the station, matching Nadine's type. Her diary, discovered in a drawer, detailed the escalating abuse. Christian's jealousy turning physical in slaps and shoves. Her plans to leave him after exams. Friends corroborated, one saying Nadine had confided her terror just days before, begging for advice on escaping safely. Police pieced together the timeline. The argument over his unemployment, his accusation of her cheating, the knife grabbed in blind fury. Christian was arrested on January 16th in Munich, his face gaunt as German officers extradited him, the weight of his actions crashing down during the long drive back to Austria. The trial gripped Vienna in the spring of 1995, the courtroom in the Landesgericht packed with reporters and locals, the air thick with anticipation. Prosecutor Helge Schmidt laid out the case methodically, starting with the crime scene photos, Nadine's body a stark reminder of the violence. Witnesses painted Christian as obsessive, his temper a ticking bomb, the divorce papers motive enough for murder. Christian took the stand, his voice breaking as he claimed self-defense, saying, Nadine attacked him first with the knife during the fight, his wounds minor scratches. But the evidence contradicted. The angle of stabs showed an aggressor above, not below, and his flight proved guilt. Nadine's mother testified last, her voice steady through tears, describing her daughter's dreams, the call the night before, full of life. The jury deliberated for 2 days, the city holding its breath, before returning guilty of manslaughter on May 10, 1995, sentencing him to 15 years in Graz prison. Appeals failed, Christian serving his time in isolation. His release in 2010 met with quiet anonymity, far from Vienna's light. Nadine's family honored her memory with a scholarship for literature students, her bookstore job a legend among staff, the apartment building renamed in her honor years later. The snow that fell that night melted into spring, but the chill of her loss lingered. A young woman's light extinguished too soon. Her story, a cautionary whisper in the wind. As this story fades, another tale awaits in the shadow. The spring sun dipped low over Houston, Texas, casting a golden glow across the cracked sidewalks of South Point Apartments, where the hum of evening traffic mingled with the laughter of kids playing outside. It was May 27, 2016, and Karen Perez, a 15-year-old freshman at South Houston High School, with a shy smile and dreams of becoming a veterinarian, walked home from a nearby convenience store, her backpack slung over one shoulder. Her dark hair bounced as she moved, her earbuds playing a favorite song, her phone tucked into the pocket of her jeans. Karen lived with her mother, Maria, in a modest unit filled with family photos and the scent of homemade tamales, a place where she spent hours sketching animals and texting friends. She had been dating a classmate, a 15-year-old boy named Ernesto, for a few months, their young romance marked by stolen glances in the school hallway and late-night chat. But Ernesto's affection had grown intense, his texts demanding, his jealousy flaring when Karen laughed with others. That afternoon, after school let out early for Memorial Day weekend, Karen agreed to meet him near the apartments to talk, her heart heavy with the weight of his recent anger. She didn't know he was waiting in the shadows of a vacant unit, his mind set on a plan that would end her life and haunt a community forever. Karen's days were filled with the quiet joys of a teenager finding her place, cheerleading practice, biology homework, and whispered secrets with her best friend Vanessa about college plans. Maria, a single mother working long shifts at a local diner, trusted Karen's judgment but worried about Ernesto, his brooding presence a contrast to her daughter's warmth. Karen had confided to Vanessa about his controlling ways, how he'd grab her phone to check her messages, his voice sharp when she didn't reply fast enough. On May 27th, as she walked toward the meeting spot, her phone buzzed with a text from Ernesto. "Meet me at the empty apartment. We need to talk." The complex, with its peeling paint and overgrown lawns, had several vacant units, and Karen hesitated but went, her trust in him outweighing her unease. Ernesto stood by the door of Unit 12B, his lanky frame tense, his eyes dark as he waved her inside. The air inside was stale, the floors dusty, and as Karen stepped in, asking what was wrong, he locked the door behind her, his silence chilling. Without warning, he grabbed her, his hands rough, pushing her against the wall as she struggled, her cries muffled by his grip. The attack was brutal and swift. Ernesto, driven by a mix of rage and rejection, overpowered Karen, her small frame no match for his strength. He choked her, his hands tightening around her throat as she gasped, her nails scratching at his arms, her phone falling to the floor. Her screams faded into silence, her body going limp as he continued, the life draining from her eyes. In a panic, he dragged her to a corner of the unit, covering her with a pile of old blankets, her backpack tossed nearby. Ernesto fled, his sneakers pounding the pavement, leaving the door ajar, the apartment a tomb for a girl who deserved so much more. Maria, expecting Karen home by 6 p.m., grew frantic when calls went to voicemail, her heart sinking as she dialed neighbors and friends. By 8 p.m., she called the Houston Police Department, her voice breaking as she described Karen, 5'2", 110 pounds, last seen in a red hoodie. Officers arrived, canvassing the complex, their flashlights sweeping the grounds, but the night offered no answers, only the echo of Maria's sob. The search gripped South Houston, volunteers scouring parks and alleys, Karen's face on every news channel, her cheerleading photo a haunting reminder of her vibrancy. On May 30th, 3 days later, a maintenance worker checking the vacant units found her body in 12 EB, hidden under the blankets, her phone nearby, its screen cracked but still holding secrets. The scene was heart-wrenching. Karen's body bore marks of strangulation, bruises on her neck and wrists, her hoodie torn from the struggle. The medical examiner confirmed asphyxiation, signs of assault adding to the horror, the time of death pinned to late afternoon on May 27th. Detectives collected the phone, its contents a treasure trove. Texts from Ernesto demanding she meet him, a chilling audio clip recorded accidentally during the attack, capturing her pleas. "Ernesto, stop. You're hurting me." And his voice, cold and commanding, telling her to be quiet. The clip, barely 20 seconds, was a digital lifeline, Karen's final act of resistance, preserved when her phone's voice memo app triggered in her pocket. Police issued an alert for Ernesto, his description, 5'9", thin, last seen in a black cap, circulating as classmates whispered about his obsession, how he'd follow Karen between classes, his anger flaring when she pulled away. Ernesto was arrested the next day, June 1st, hiding at a cousin's house in Pasadena, his face pale as officers cuffed him, the weight of his actions sinking in. In interrogation, he claimed Karen had broken up with him, the meeting a desperate attempt to win her back, but the audio shattered his lies. Detectives found his DNA under her nails, scratches on his arms, matching her fight. His phone held photos of Karen, some taken without her knowledge, and a deleted message sent to a friend. "She's gone. I messed up." The community mourned, Maria collapsing at the news, her family gathering around her. Vanessa lighting candles at a vigil outside the school. The audio clip became the case's heart, played in pretrial hearings as evidence of premeditation, Ernesto's voice a chilling echo of his guilt. Prosecutors charged him as an adult with capital murder, citing the brutality and the recording as proof of intent. The apartment, sealed off, became a grim landmark, neighbors avoiding its windows, the air heavy with law. The trial began in March 2017 in Harris County Juvenile Court, moved to adult court due to the crime's severity. The courtroom packed with Karen's family and classmates, the air thick with grief. Prosecutor Melissa Hervey opened with the audio, Karen's voice filling the room, jurors wiping tears as her pleas echoed, followed by Ernesto's cold commands. Maria testified, her voice steady through pain, describing Karen's dreams, her love for animals, the way she'd sing while cooking. Classmates recounted Ernesto's jealousy, one teacher noting his fixation, how he'd linger outside Karen's classes. Forensics sealed the case, DNA, the audio fibers from his cap found in the unit. Ernesto's defense claimed passion, a fight gone wrong. But the recording told a different story. His control deliberate. He took the stand, his voice shaking, admitting the argument, but denying intent. His tears unconvincing. His tears unconvincing. The jury deliberated for 4 hours, returning guilty of capital murder on April 3, 2017. Judge Maria Irwin sentenced him to life without parole. Texas law firm on juvenile murderers. His youth no shield from the crime's weight. Houston carried the scars. South Point Apartments quieter, its residents locking doors. Karen's memory honored with a memorial bench at school, her sketches displayed in the library. Maria moved away, unable to stay where her daughter died, but returned for vigils, clutching Karen's phone, now a keepsake. Ernesto's appeals dragged on, denied by 2020, his life confined to a cell in Huntsville. His life confined to a cell in Huntsville. The case featured on a 2018 Dateline episode titled A Voice in the Dark, gripped viewers. Keith Morrison narrating the audio's power, Karen's courage shining through. True crime forums buzzed, Reddit users calling her a hero for the accidental recording, a lifeline that brought justice. The vacant unit was renovated, but its walls whispered of a girl whose voice, captured in a fleeting moment, spoke truth from the grave. As this story fades, another tale awaits in the shadow. The sun dipped low over the sprawling township of Soweto, South Africa, casting a warm golden light across the dusty streets where children played and vendors called out their wares. It was March 12, 2019, and Sibissel Happiness Nkais, a 28-year-old teacher with a radiant smile and a passion for uplifting her students, walked home from Orlando West High School, her satchel heavy with lesson plans. Her dark hair was neatly braided, her colorful dress swaying as she moved through the familiar paths of Meadowlands, a neighborhood alive with the rhythm of daily life. Sibissel lived in a modest home with her mother, Thandi, and younger brother, Sifo, a place filled with laughter, family photos, and the aroma of pap cooking on the stove. She was known for her kindness, staying late to tutor kids, her classroom a haven where dreams of university felt possible. But lately, her heart carried a quiet burden. Her ex-boyfriend, Thabo Mentembu, a 30-year-old mechanic with a quick temper, refused to let go after their breakup 6 months early. His calls came late at night, his texts pleading then threatening, his presence lingering like a shadow she couldn't shake. That evening, as she turned onto her street, her phone buzzed with his name, but she ignored it, unaware he waited just beyond the glow of the streetlight, his mind set on reclaiming her at any cost. Sibissel's life was one of purpose, rooted in her love for teaching and her dream to open a community library, a place where Soweto's youth could find books and hope. She had met Thabo at a local braai 2 years earlier, his charm drawing her in with promises of a shared future. But his jealousy surfaced quickly, angry outbursts when she spoke to male colleagues, accusations of infidelity that left her drained. She ended it in September 2018, her resolve firm, despite his tears, moving on to focus on her students and family. Thabo, however, spiraled, his mechanic shop struggling, his nights spent drinking, his obsession growing with each unanswered message. He'd been seen near her school, watching from a distance, neighbors whispering about his late night pacing outside her house. On March 12th, as Sibissel approached her gate, the air thick with the scent of coal fires, Thabo stepped from the shadows, his face tense, a knife tucked into his belt. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low but edged with menace. She froze, her heart racing, but agreed to step into the alley, hoping to calm him, her instinct to avoid a scene overriding the fear creeping up her spine. The alley was narrow, flanked by corrugated iron fences, the sounds of Soweto muffled in its darkness. Tabo's words came fast, a mix of pleas and accusations, blaming her for his misery, his hands gripping her arms as she tried to pull away. Sibisal's voice stayed steady, urging him to let her go, but his anger flared, the knife flashing as he drew it, his eyes wild with desperation. She fought back, her satchel swinging as she pushed against him, her screams echoing briefly before he overpowered her, the blade sinking into her chest, once, then again. Blood soaked her dress, her body crumpling to the ground as she gasped, her hands clutching the dirt, a final act of defiance, scrawling letters in the dust. T.H.A. Tabo, panting, wiped the knife on his shirt, panic setting in as he dragged her body behind a stack of crates, covering her with an old tarp before fleeing into the night, the knife tossed into a nearby ditch. Sibisal's phone, dropped in the struggle, lay silent, its last call to her mother unanswered, the screen glowing faintly in the dark. Morning broke with a neighbor's dog barking, alerting Sifo, who noticed Sibisal's absence when he woke for school. Dandy, sensing something wrong, called her daughter's phone, the ring leading a neighbor to the alley where the tarp lay disturbed. Police from the Soweto precinct arrived by 7 a.m., their radios crackling as they uncovered Sibisal's body, her face peaceful despite the horror, 3 stab wounds to her chest, her hands caked with dirt, the partial TH, a clear, in the dust beside her. The scene was heart-wrenching, officers bowing their heads as Thandi collapsed, her wails drawing a crowd of mourners. Detectives photographed the scrawl, recognizing it as a dying message, the letters pointing to a name. Sifo, through tears, mentioned Tabo's harassment, his late-night visits, and Sibisal's fear. The community rallied, teachers and students gathering at the school gate, candles flickering as they sang hymns for their fallen star. The medical examiner confirmed death by exsanguination, the time around 7:30 p.m., defensive wounds on her arms showing her fight. Police issued an alert for Thabo, his description, 5'10", stocky, last seen in a mechanic's jacket, circulated across Gauteng. The investigation moved fast, fueled by Sibisal's final clue. Detectives tracked Thabo's phone, pinging near a Sheben in Diep Kloof, 10 miles away, where he'd been drinking since the murder. A search of his apartment uncovered blood-stained clothes hidden in a trash bin, the knife recovered from the ditch bearing his fingerprints and her blood. Thabo was arrested on March 14th, his face blank as officers cuffed him, his story unraveling in interrogation. He claimed Sibisal attacked him, a lie shattered by the evidence and witness accounts of his stalking. Neighbors confirmed seeing him near her house that night, one recalling his angry muttering as he paced. Sibisal's phone held a chilling record, 47 missed calls from Thabo in the past week, texts begging for reconciliation, then threatening harm. The dust-scrawled T. H became the case's heart, a testament to her courage, displayed in photos to investigators as proof of her last act. Soweto mourned, the school closing for a day, students painting murals of Sibisal with books and smiles, her legacy a beacon of hope. The trial began in August 2019 in the Johannesburg High Court, the courtroom packed with teachers, students, and family. the air heavy with grief and resolve. Prosecutor Saifo Angobeni opened with the scrawl, enlarged images showing Sabissel's bloodied fingers forming the letters, a silent accusation that gripped the room. Dandy testified, her voice breaking as she described her daughter's dreams. The fear Thabo instilled, the call cut short that night. Witnesses painted his obsession, friends recalling his rants, a co-worker noting his absence from the shop after 6 p.m. Forensics sealed the case. DNA on the knife, blood on his clothes, the scrawl's claret. Thabo's defense claimed passion, a moment of rage, but his calm disposal of evidence showed intent. He took the stand, his voice shaky, admitting an argument but denying murder, his tears unconvincing. The jury deliberated for 3 hours, returning guilty of murder on August 29, 2019. Judge Namondi M. Kibisa sentenced him to 25 years, no parole, calling his act a betrayal of love and community. Soweto carried the weight, Meadowlands quieter, its streets lined with tributes to Sabissel, flowers, candles, her favorite poems read at vigils. Dandy founded a literacy program in her name, turning grief into action, Saifo helping teach kids to read. Thabo's appeals failed, his life confined to Polesmore prison, his name fading as Sabissel's shown. The case, featured in a 2020 documentary, The Dust of Truth, captivated South Africa. The scrawl, a symbol of a woman's fight. Online forums praised her bravery, her message in the dust, a cry that echoed beyond death. The alley, now paved, bore a small plaque, a quiet reminder of a teacher whose final act brought justice to her township. As this story fades, another tale awaits in the shadow. The evening sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky over Durban, South Africa, in hues of orange and purple as the bustling streets of Chatsworth began to quiet. It was April 3, 2017, and Koza Amarjit, a 32-year-old convenience store clerk with a warm smile and a knack for remembering customers' names, locked up the shop on Pelican Drive, her keys jingling softly in the cooling air. Her keys jingling softly in the cooling air. Her long black hair was tied back in a practical braid, her work apron folded neatly in her bag as she started the short walk home to her family's modest flat, where her mother, Priya, and younger sister, Anika, waited with a pot of curry simmering on the stove. Koza, born to Indian immigrants who settled in Durban decades earlier, lived for her family and her dream of saving enough to study nursing, her evenings spent poring over medical books borrowed from the library. But her life wasn't without shadows. Her former co-worker, Vikash Naidu, a 35-year-old delivery driver with a brooding stare, had grown obsessed after she rejected his advances months earlier. His late-night messages, filled with pleas and veiled threats, had pushed her to change her shifts. But Vikash's presence lingered, his van often parked near the store, watching. That night, as Koza turned down a quiet alley, her phone buzzing with a text from Anika about dinner, Vikash waited in the dusk, his heart pounding with a plan to make her his, no matter the cost. Koza's world was one of resilience, her days filled with the rhythm of ringing up groceries, chatting with regulars, and dreaming of a future where she could help others heal. She had met Vikash at the store a year ago, his easy banter initially friendly but turning possessive when she declined a date, citing her focus on studies. His reaction was sharp, angry calls showing up uninvited at her closing shifts, his van idling across the street. Koza confided in Anika, her voice trembling as she described his insistence that they were meant to be, her fear growing when he followed her home one night, stopping only when a neighbor intervened. She reported him to the store manager, who fired him, but Vikash's obsession deepened. His social media posts cryptic, photos of Koza from afar saved on his phone. On April 3rd, as she walked through the alley, the air thick with the scent of jasmine from nearby gardens, Vikash stepped from behind a fence, his voice low and urgent, demanding she listen. Koza's heart raced, her instincts screaming to run, but she tried to reason, her voice calm as she backed away, asking him to leave her alone. His eyes darkened, a knife glinting in his hand, pulled from his pocket with chilling intent. The attack unfolded in seconds, Vikash lunging as Koza turned to flee, the blade catching her arm, then her side, as she screamed for help, her voice echoing off the alley wall. She fought fiercely, her hands pushing against him, her bag dropping as she scratched at his face, drawing blood. Vikash overpowered her, his knife sinking into her chest, the wounds deep and relentless, blood pooling on the ground as she staggered, collapsing against a wall. Gasping, her strength fading, she dipped her trembling fingers into the blood, seeping from her side, scrawling letters on the concrete. VIK, a desperate message to name her killer before darkness took her. Vikash, panting, wiped the knife on his sleeve, panic setting in as he heard distant voices. He dragged her body behind a stack of crates, covering it with a tarp, then fled, tossing the knife into a storm drain a block away. Koza's phone, cracked in the struggle, lay nearby, its screen dark but holding a final unanswered call to Anika, placed as she sensed danger. Morning broke with Priya's worry, Koza's bed empty, her phone silent since the night before. Anika, frantic, retraced her sister's route, her heart sinking when she reached the alley, spotting the tarp and a smear of blood. She called the South African Police Service, her voice breaking as officers from Chatsworth Station arrived, their radios crackling in the morning light. The scene was devastating. Koza's body, hidden under the tarp, bore multiple stab wounds, her face serene despite the violence, the scrawl VIK stark on the wall beside her. Priya collapsed, her wails drawing neighbors, the community gathering in shock as police taped off the alley. The medical examiner confirmed death by exsanguination, the time around 7:45 p.m. Defensive wounds on her arms, showing her fight. Fight here. Detectives photographed the scrawl, recognizing it as a dying message, the letters pointing to Vikash, a name Anika tearfully confirmed as Koza's stalker. The store manager provided his address, and a search warrant revealed his van parked nearby, blood traces on the steering wheel. Chatsworth mourned, the store closing for a day, customers leaving flowers at the counter where Koza once stood. The investigation surged forward, fueled by Koza's final act. Police tracked Vikash's phone, pinging near a friend's flat in Phoenix, 10 miles away, where he'd been hiding since the murder. A raid on April 5 uncovered a bloody jacket in his bag, the knife recovered from the drain bearing his fingerprints and her blood. Vikash was arrested at a bus stop, his face pale as officers cuffed him, his story crumbling. He claimed self-defense, saying Koza attacked him in a fit of anger, but the scrawl and evidence told a different truth. Witnesses confirmed his stalking, a co-worker recalling his rants about Koza's rejection, a neighbor spotting his van near the alley that night. Koza's phone held a chilling record: 32 missed calls from the cache in the past month, texts begging her to meet, then threatening harm. The scrawl became the case's heart, displayed in photos to investigators, a testament to her courage, a testament to her courage. Durban's Indian community rallied, holding vigils outside the store, candles flickering as they sang prayers for Koza's soul, her dream of nursing a beacon for others. The trial began in November 2017 in the Durban High Court, the courtroom packed with family, friends, and locals, the air heavy with grief and resolve. Prosecutor Naledi Mbatha opened with the scrawl, enlarged images showing Koza's bloodied fingers forming the letters, a silent accusation that gripped jurors. Priya testified, her voice steady through tears, describing Koza's kindness, the fear Vikash instilled, the unanswered call that night. Witnesses painted his obsession, a friend recalling his fixation, a neighbor noting his van's frequent presence. Forensics sealed the case, DNA on the knife, blood on his clothes, the scrawl's clarity. Vikash's defense claimed a crime of passion, but his calculated disposal of evidence showed intent. He took the stand, his voice faltering, admitting an argument but denying murder, his remorse unconvincing. The jury deliberated for 5 hours, returning guilty of murder on November 29, 2017. Judge Thandiwe Angshamalo sentenced him to 20 years, no parole, calling his act a betrayal of trust and community. Chatsworth carried the weight, its streets quieter, the store adorned with a mural of Koza, her smile painted above the words, "Forever Teaching." Priya and Anika started a nursing scholarship in her name, turning grief into hope. The flat, filled with her books, as a quiet library. Vikash's appeals failed, his life confined to Westville prison, his name fading as Koza's shone. The case, featured in a 2018 documentary, Letters in Blood, captivated South Africa, the scrawl a symbol of a woman's fight. Online forums praised her bravery, her message in blood a cry that echoed beyond death. The alley, now cleaned, bore a small plaque, a reminder of a clerk whose final act brought justice to her community. As this story fades, another tale awaits in the shadow. The autumn rain fell softly over London, draping the streets of Mayfair in a gray mist as streetlights flickered to life in the early evening. It was November 1st, 2006, and Alexander Litvinenko, a 43-year-old former Russian FSB officer with sharp eyes and a lean frame, sat in the pine bar of the Millennium Hotel, his hands wrapped around a cup of green tea. His short-cropped hair and weathered face bore the marks of a man who had lived under pressure, his life reshaped by his defection to the UK 6 years earlier, after exposing corruption in Moscow's secret service. Now a British citizen, Sasha, as friends called him, lived in a modest Muswell Hill flat with his wife Marina and their son Anatoly, working as a consultant and critic of the Kremlin. His outspoken books and articles accused Vladimir Putin's regime of crimes, earning him enemies who never forgot. That day, he met Andrei Lugovoy and Dmitry Kovtun, two former KGB contacts, for a quick drink to discuss a business deal. The bar buzzed with chatter, the clink of glasses masking the danger in the tea. Sasha sipped, its faint, metallic taste unnoticed as he shook hands with the men and headed out into the damp London night, unaware that a lethal poison was already coursing through his veins. Sasha's life in London was one of cautious freedom, a balance between his love for his family and the constant shadow of his past. He had fled Russia in 2000 after refusing orders to assassinate oligarch Boris Berezovsky, his conscience driving him to expose FSB plots, including apartment bombings blamed on Chechens but orchestrated, he claimed, by the state. Granted asylum in the UK, he worked with MI6, providing intelligence on Russian operations, his insights valuable, but his profile high-risk. Marina, a dance instructor with a gentle smile, supported his mission, though she worried about anonymous threats, letters slipped under their door, calls in the night with no voice on the line. Sasha kept a notebook, its pages filled with names of enemies and suspicions, a habit from his spy days. On November 1st, he felt fine, leaving the Pine Bar, catching a bus home to kiss Anatoly goodnight and share a quiet dinner with Marina, the city's hum. But by midnight, nausea gripped him, his stomach twisting as he vomited violently, his body shaking with chills he couldn't explain. The next morning, Sasha woke weak, his skin pale, his energy drained as if the life was seeping from him. Marina, alarmed, drove him to Barnet Hospital, where doctors initially suspected food poisoning, prescribing fluids and rest. But his condition worsened. Fever spiked, his hair fell out in clumps, his throat burned as if scorched. By November 3rd, he was transferred to University College Hospital. Specialists puzzled by his rapid decline, blood tests showing his white cell count plummeting, his organs failing. Sasha, lucid despite the pain, whispered to Marina about the tea, his suspicion falling on Lugovoy and Kovtun, men he'd trusted enough to meet, but whose Kremlin ties he'd always questioned. Doctors, stumped, called in toxicologists, and on November 17th, a breakthrough. Tests revealed polonium-210, a rare radioactive isotope in his urine, its levels astronomical, a poison so deadly a speck could kill. The diagnosis was chilling. Deliberate radiation poisoning, a method so sophisticated it pointed to state involvement. Sasha, now barely able to speak, dictated a statement from his hospital bed, his voice weak but resolute. I can hear the beating wings of the angel of death. You may succeed in silencing me, but that silence comes at a price. He accused Putin directly, his words a final act of defiance, scrawled in a notebook for Marina to keep safe. While London's Metropolitan Police launched a high-stakes investigation, the city gripped by the specter of a Cold War-style assassination. Detectives traced Sasha's movements, finding polonium traces in the Pine Bar's teapot, the hotel's bathrooms, even a sushi restaurant where he'd met another contact, Mario Scaramella, earlier that day. Radiation swept through London, Lugovoy and Covington's hotel rooms, a shisha bar they visited, an Emirates Stadium seat where they watched Arsenal play, all contaminated with the isotope's invisible trail. The men had flown back to Moscow days after the meeting, their luggage leaving a radioactive path at Heathrow. Marina, devastated but fierce, handed over Sasha's notebook, its pages detailing his fears of Kremlin retaliation, names like Lugovoy circled in red. The FSB's reach was long, and Sasha's work had made him a target, his exposés on Putin's ties to organized crime, his claims of assassination plots, all public and provocative. The polonium, sourced to a Russian nuclear facility, was no accident. its use requiring expertise and access beyond ordinary criminals. Sasha clung to life for 22 days, his body wasting away, his face gaunt but his spirit unbroken as he spoke to detectives, naming his killers with certainty. On November 23rd, 2006, he slipped into a coma, his heart stopping as Marina held his hand, Anatoly's small voice asking for daddy echoing in her mind. The autopsy, conducted in a sealed room due to radiation risks, confirmed polonium-210 as the cause, its alpha particles shredding his organs from within. The case exploded across headlines, the poisoned spy dominating news in London and beyond. The public, riveted by the audacity of a nuclear hit in a bustling capital. Scotland Yard built a meticulous case, tracing the polonium's path, interviewing witnesses, and issuing arrest warrants for Lugovoy and Kovtun, who remained in Moscow, shielded by Russia's refusal to extradite. A 2016 public inquiry, led by Sir Robert Owen, concluded they acted under FSB orders, likely with Putin's approval. The evidence, radiation trails, Sasha's statement, intercepted calls, overwhelming. No arrests came, the men free in Russia, Lugovoy even elected to parliament, a defiant symbol of impunity. Marina carried on, raising Anatoly in London, her grief channeled into advocacy for justice, her husband's notebook a testament to his courage. Muswell Hill's quiet streets held vigils, neighbors leaving flowers at their flat. Sasha's story, a warning of power's reach. The Pine Bar closed for weeks, decontaminated but forever marked. The teapot preserved in evidence, a relic of betrayal. Documentaries like Hunting the KGB Killers aired in 2017, retelling the saga, Sasha's dying words, a rallying cry for truth. Online forums buzz, Reddit threads dissecting polonium's logistics, his defiance a beacon for whistleblowers. London moved on, its skies clearing, but Sasha's voice lingered. A man who named his killers from a hospital bed, his life a price for exposing a regime's darkness. As this story fades, another tale awaits in the shadow. The spring rain tapped lightly against the windows of a small apartment in Flushing, Queens, where the hum of New York City's endless energy seeped through the walls. It was May 12, 2005, and Simon Ang, a 21-year-old college student with a quick wit and a love for writing, sat at his desk in the family's modest home on Colden Street, typing a blog entry on his laptop. His dark hair fell over his forehead as he worked, his glasses reflecting the screen's glow, his mind weaving stories of his life as a Chinese American navigating dreams of becoming a journalist. Simon shared the apartment with his older sister, Jenny, 23, a recent graduate working as a paralegal, their bond tight despite the pressures of young adulthood. Their parents, immigrants from Hong Kong, had raised them to value education, and Simon, a junior at Queens College, was thriving, his blog a mix of humor and raw honesty about his days. But the evening wasn't all calm. Simon had been uneasy about Jenny's ex-boyfriend, Jin Lin, a 25-year-old drifter with a history of trouble, whose obsessive calls and unannounced visits had grown more frequent since their breakup. As Simon typed, the apartment door rattled, and Jin's voice called out, his tone sharp, demanding to see Jenny, who was still at work. Simon's fingers paused, his heart quickening, unaware that the night would end in blood. Simon's life was one of quiet ambition, his days filled with classes, late-night study sessions, and blogging about everything from music to his sister's cooking. Jenny, protective and driven, had met Jin at a community event 2 years earlier, drawn to his charm, but soon wary of his volatility. His temper flared over small things, his jealousy spiking when she prioritized work. She ended it months ago, but Jin, jobless and living in a cramped basement nearby, couldn't let go, his texts alternating between apologies and threat. Simon had urged Jenny to report him, his blog hinting at her creepy ex and vague posts, but she hoped he'd fade away. On May 12th, Jin's patience snapped, his obsession boiling over after Jenny blocked his number. He knew her work schedule, knew she'd be late, and saw Simon alone as his chance to confront her through him. Armed with a kitchen knife he'd stolen from a neighbor, Jin knocked, his voice calm at first, claiming he just wanted to talk. Simon, cautious but trusting, opened the door a crack, his instincts dulled by the familiarity of Jin's face, a mistake that would cost him everything. The attack came fast, Jin forcing his way in, the knife flashing as he lunged at Simon, who stumbled back, his laptop crashing to the floor. Simon fought hard, his hands grabbing at Jin's wrists, his shouts for help drowned by the rain outside, the apartment's thin walls muffling his cry. The blade sank into his chest, then his stomach, blood soaking his shirt as he staggered toward the kitchen, his strength fading. Jenny's keys jangled in the hall. She'd come home early, sensing trouble after Simon's last text. Jin's here, acting weird. She opened the door to chaos. Simon collapsing, Jin turning on her with wild eyes. Jenny screamed, dodging a slash, her purse swinging as she pushed past him to Simon, who gasped, his fingers dipping into the blood pooling on the floor, scrawling J.I.N. on the linoleum before his eyes closed. Jin fled, the knife dropped in the stairwell, his footsteps fading into the city's hum. Jenny cradled Simon, dialing 911, her voice breaking as she begged for help, the operator struggling to calm her as sirens wailed closer. Police from the 109th precinct flooded the apartment, their flashlights catching the grim scene. Simon's body near the kitchen, blood smeared across the floor, the scrawled J.I.N. stark under the overhead light. Jenny, in shock, recounted Jin's obsession, her hands shaking as she identified the letters as Simon's last act, naming his killer. The medical examiner confirmed death by multiple stab wounds, the time around 8:45 p.m., defensive cuts on Simon's arms showing his fight. Neighbors reported hearing shouts, one spotting a man in a hoodie, Jin's signature look, running from the building. The Ann's family, notified at their Brooklyn restaurant, arrived in tears, their mother, May, collapsing as she saw Simon's body, Jenny clinging to her father, David, for strength. Detectives found the knife in the stairwell, Jin's fingerprints clear, blood matching Simon's. His blog, still open on the laptop, mentioned Jin's harassment, a digital diary that echoed his dying message. Flushing mourned, students gathering outside the apartment, candles flickering as they read Simon's posts aloud, his words a haunting legacy. The investigation moved with urgency, fueled by Simon's scrawl. Police tracked Jin's phone, pinging near a friend's place in Elmhurst, where he'd crashed after the murder. A raid on May 14th uncovered bloodied clothes in a dumpster, Jin's DNA on the knife handle, and a bus ticket to Philadelphia, suggesting flight. He was arrested at a bodega, his face blank as officers cuffed him, his silence damning. In interrogation, Jin claimed self-defense, saying Simon attacked him over the breakup, but the scrawl and Jenny's testimony shattered his story. Witnesses confirmed his stalking. A classmate saw him outside Jenny's office, a neighbor noting his late-night loitering. Simon's blog posts, printed for evidence, detailed Jen's threats. One entry reading, "He won't leave her alone. I'm worried." The scrawl became the case's heart. A photo shown to investigators, Simon's final act of protection for his sister. Queens rallied, a vigil at Queens College, drawing hundreds. Jenny speaking through tears about her brother's dreams, his laptop now a shrine. The trial began in March 2006 in Queens Supreme Court. The courtroom packed with Simon's classmates and family, the air heavy with grief. Prosecutor Sarah Kim opened with the scrawl. Enlarged photos showing Simon's bloodied fingers forming the letters, a silent cry that gripped jurors. Jenny testified, her voice steady despite pain, describing the attack, Simon's last breath as he wrote Jen's name. Witnesses painted Jen's obsession, a co-worker recalling his rants, a friend noting his fixation on Jenny's social media. Forensics sealed the case, DNA, the knife, the blog's warnings. Jen's defense argued passion, a fight gone wrong, but his calculated escape undercut the claim. He took the stand, his voice faltering, admitting an argument but denying intent, his tears unconvincing. The jury deliberated for 3 hours, returning guilty of second-degree murder on April 10, 2006. Judge Barry Cron sentenced him to 25 years to life, calling his act a betrayal of trust. Jenny wept, clutching Simon's laptop, its screen now dark, but its words eternal. Flushing carried the loss. Colden Street quieter, a mural of Simon with a pen and smile painted near the apartment. May and David started a journalism scholarship in his name. Jenny curating his blog online, its posts read worldwide. Jen's appeals failed, his life confined to Rikers Island, his name fading as Simon's shown. The case, featured in a 2007 48 Hours episode, The Blogger's Last Words, captivated viewers, the scrawl a symbol of courage. Reddit threads praised Simon's bravery, his message in blood a cry for justice. The apartment, re-rented, held no trace of the horror, but Simon's words lingered, a young man's final act protecting his sister from the grave. As this story fades, another tale awaits in the shadow. The summer sun hung low over the rolling hills of Princeton, Massachusetts, casting long shadows across the quiet trails of Brooks Station Road. It was August 7, 2016, and Vanessa Marcotte, a 27-year-old marketing manager with a radiant smile and a love for adventure, jogged along the path, her sneakers kicking up dust in the warm afternoon air. Her dark blonde hair was pulled back in a ponytail, her athletic frame moving with the steady rhythm of someone who ran to clear her mind. Vanessa had grown up in nearby Leominster, but now lived in New York City, her career at Google thriving, her weekends spent visiting her parents' cozy home in Princeton for family dinners and runs through the familiar countryside. That Sunday, she'd kissed her mother, Rosanna, goodbye after lunch, promising to be back by 3 p.m. for a barbecue, her phone tucked into her running belt, music playing softly through her earbuds. Unbeknownst to her, a stranger watched from the woods, his eyes fixed on her solitary figure, his intentions dark. Angelo Colin Ortiz, a 31-year-old delivery driver with a shadowed past, had driven his truck to the area, his mind set on violence, the rural trail a perfect stage for his crime. Vanessa's life was one of vibrancy, her days filled with meetings in Manhattan, evenings with friends at rooftop bars, and dreams of traveling the world. She was close to her family, her father, John, a retired mechanic, and Rosanna, a school teacher, cherishing her visits home where they'd laugh over old photos and plan hiking trips. Her Princeton runs were a ritual, the trails a place to escape the city's noise. Her strength honed from years of track in high school. She was cautious, always texting her route to her mom, her phone's GPS active for safety. That day, as she rounded a bend near a wooded stretch, the air thick with the scent of pine and wildflowers, Colin Ortiz, his presence sudden and menacing. Vanessa sensed danger, her instincts sharp, and turned to sprint. But he was faster, grabbing her arm with a grip like iron, dragging her into the underbrush as she fought back, her screams swallowed by the dense forest. The struggle was fierce, Vanessa's athletic build giving her strength to resist, her nails clawing at his face, drawing blood as she kicked and twisted. Colin Ortiz, fueled by rage, overpowered her, his hands tightening around her throat, a knife from his pocket slashing at her arms and chest. Blood stained the leaves, her body weakening as she gasped, her fingers scraping the dirt in a final act of defiance, scratching a C into the soil before her strength gave out. He left her lifeless in the woods, partially hidden under branches, her phone smashed nearby, its screen dark, but its data intact. Colin Ortiz fled in his truck, wiping blood from his cheek, unaware that Vanessa's fight had left a mark that would haunt. Hours passed, and when she didn't return for the barbecue, Rosanna's worry turned to panic, her calls to Vanessa's phone unanswered. John drove the trail, his heart sinking as he found nothing, the family calling Massachusetts State Police by 5 p.m., reporting Vanessa, 5'6", 130 pounds, last seen in a blue tank top, missing. Police descended on Princeton, a small town of 3,000 unaccustomed to such horror, their searchlights sweeping the trails as volunteers joined, calling Vanessa's name into the dust. On August 8, a hiker found her body half a mile off the road, hidden in a thicket, her clothes torn, her face bruised but serene. The scene was devastating, multiple stab wounds, signs of strangulation, and the faint see scratched in the dirt beside her, a dying message that stunned detectives. The medical examiner confirmed death by asphyxiation and trauma, the time around 2 p.m. Defensive wounds showing her fierce fight. Rosanna collapsed, clutching Vanessa's running shoes, John's stoic face breaking as he identified her body. Police collected DNA from the scratches, the soil scrawl photographed as evidence, Vanessa's phone yielding GPS data, pinning her last location. The community reeled, vigils lighting the town green, friends from New York arriving to mourn, their candles flickering against photos of Vanessa's smile. The investigation surged, fueled by Vanessa's final clue. Detectives canvassed Princeton, pulling traffic camera footage showing a dark truck near the trail, its plates registered to Colin Ortiz, a Worcester resident with a minor record for theft. His DNA, matched from a prior arrest, aligned with the scratches, his truck's tire tracks found near the scene. On April 15, 2017, police arrested him at his apartment, his face blank, as officers cuffed him, a bloody jacket hidden in his closet sealing his fate. In interrogation, he claimed he was working, but his delivery logs had gaps. A co-worker, noting his absence that afternoon, Vanessa's phone data showed a brief call attempt to 911, cut off in the struggle, her scrawl the key to naming him. Witnesses reported his odd behavior, lurking near trails, staring at female joggers, his truck often parked in rural spots. The AC became the case's heart, a testament to Vanessa's courage, shown in court photos as her voice from the grave. The trial began in November 2019 in Worcester Superior Court, the courtroom packed with Vanessa's family, friends, and Googlers, the air heavy with grief. Prosecutor John Bradley opened with a scroll, enlarged images of a sea in the dirt gripping jurors, Vanessa's fight vivid in their minds. Rosanna testified, her voice steady through tears, describing her daughter's love for running, her fearlessness, the text sent before her jaw. Witnesses painted Colin Ortiz's pattern. A neighbor saw him near the trail days before, a jogger recalling his unsettling stare. Forensics sealed the case. DNA, tire tracks, blood on his jacket. His defense claimed mistaken identity, the scrawl a coincidence, but his lack of alibi and DNA match were damning. Colin Ortiz took the stand, his voice flat, denying the attack, his story unraveling under cross-examination. The jury deliberated for 6 hours, returning guilty of first-degree murder on December 5, 2019. Judge Janet Kenton Walker sentenced him to life without parole, calling his act a violation of safety and trust. Princeton carried the loss, its trails quieter, a memorial bench placed where Vanessa ran, engraved with her name and a runner's silhouette. Rosanna and John started a foundation for women's safety, teaching runners self-defense, Vanessa's spirit guiding their work. Colin Ortiz's appeals failed, his life confined to Cedar Junction, his name fading as Vanessa's shown. The case, featured in a 2020 episode, Last Run, captivated viewers, the scrawl a symbol of her fight. Online forums praised her bravery, Reddit threads dissecting the DNA evidence, her message in the dirt a cry for justice. The woods, now peaceful, bore a small plaque, a reminder of a woman whose final act named her killer, ensuring he'd never harm again. Vanessa Marcotte's desperate scrawl in the dirt of a Massachusetts trail flows into the chilling narrative of Simon Ang, whose bloodied fingers named his sister's stalker in a Queens apartment, securing justice from beyond the grave.